Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on? YouTube, you guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Joe Rogan controversy. Neil Young pulling his music off Spotify, the White House and the Surgeon General calling for Joe Rogan to be canceled. We're going to kind of explain what this controversy is all about, kind of what's going on with it right now. What we think will ultimately wind up happening. Will Joe Rogan stick to his guns? Will Spotify stick to their guns and keep Rogan around? Or will they cave to the calls to pull off his show, cancel him, censor the show? In the thumbnail of this video, you probably see the background is Yellowstone. And we got Joe Rogan and John Dutton standing there. And I think I'm going to title today's video, Joe Rogan, the John Dutton of the internet. And where that comes from, I don't know if you guys watch Yellowstone. Yellowstone, probably my favorite show on TV right now. Awesome show. Don't tell me what happens at the end. I still got one episode left to go. But in one of the recent episodes, John Dutton, who's Kevin Costner, played by Kevin Costner, is running for governor of Montana. Now, John Dutton wants to preserve the land. He wants to preserve the way of life that they've always had in Montana. And a lot of the other politicians and even some people in the state want progress, right? They want to bring in ski resorts. They want to bring in an airport. They want to commercialize the space, modernize the space. And so in his acceptance speech for governor, he says, if you're looking for progress, don't vote for me. He says, I'm the opposite of progress. I'm the wall that progress bashes against, and I will not break. So where this kind of Joe Rogan reference comes from, I think Joe Rogan is kind of the John Dutton of the internet. Pretty much everyone else who's spoken out against a mainstream narrative, who's questioned anything, has been canceled from social media, screamed at by sponsors. Pretty much everybody at this point has been quieted except for Joe Rogan. And even months ago, I was seeing articles, is Joe Rogan too big to cancel? So where all this controversy is coming from, Joe Rogan is, kind of a truth seeker. He thirsts for knowledge. He's not afraid to question, official narratives. He's also very into conspiracy theories. He likes doing psychedelics because he's seeking truth and wanting to know more about the world. And he's been the exact same way over the past 2 years. And he hasn't been afraid to question mainstream narratives or the official narrative of what's going on. He's kind of against people blanketly throwing out the term misinformation, and I think that's a shame, right? If you want to silence somebody, all you have to do is say that they're spreading misinformation. You don't have to debate them. You don't have to provide any facts to prove them wrong. All you have to do is say they're spreading information, and then everybody's expected to cancel them and stop paying attention to them. And it's really kind of a fucked up way of handling things as far as having an open debate. Not censoring people, debating issues, exploring different ideas. And over the past 2 years, we've seen politicians removed from social media. We've seen doctors and researchers silenced on social media, all in the name of spreading misinformation. And the one guy they haven't been able to take down is Joe Rogan. And the one mainstream platform that hasn't gone, full bores ahead censorship thus far is Spotify. So everybody's upset with Spotify. People have been upset with Joe Rogan and people he's had on his show and kind of his views and his guest views on the Mexican beer cough for pretty much the past 2 years. But things have really heated up recently after two guests, Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Robert Malone came on the show and were kind of really questioning the mainstream narrative about the Mexican beer cough. Here's another interesting thing, right? A lot of the things that over the past 2 years have been called misinformation and would have gotten you kicked off of social media are now accepted as fact. So that kind of goes to show why banning things and censoring things and calling things misinformation is not healthy, is because most of the things that have been called misinformation have actually wound up turning out to be true and again, are now accepted as fact. So Joe Rogan is now getting a lot of controversy because recently Neil Young decided he was going to pull his music off of Spotify in protest of having Joe Rogan on there. I know Joni Mitchell wound up following. Obviously, these are like 60s, 70s rockers. They're not that relevant today. I think I maybe heard that Foo Fighters was going to join this thing. But right now, it's still kind of small. here's where this gets kind of interesting. So I was actually at a, I don't know if you want to say dinner party. I was hanging out with some friends this past Saturday night. We're playing some games, having some pizza. And by the way, cool game. If any of you guys like make things like beanbag toss games or ring games, this might be a moneymaker for you guys. There's a game called, it's called the horse racing game. And it's kind of like a wood pegboard game. You play it with dice and cards, and you bet like quarters. And there's really no skill to it, no strategy to it, but it's kind of a fun game to play if you're hanging out with some friends, having some beers or whatever. So check out the game. Highly would recommend buying one and playing it. But also, if you're kind of a craftsman, if you make things with wood, these games sell for like $80 to $100, and they look fairly easy to make. There's even some YouTube tutorials and things like that on how to make them. So could be a good side hustle for you. So I'm over at this friend's house on Saturday night, and all of a sudden someone says, or the topic comes up, someone's like, do you hear how Spotify kicked Neil Young off their platform because that piece of shit anti-vaxxer Joe Rogan, and like they were really pissed about it. And then a couple other people around the table kind of chimed in. We're like, yeah, what a piece of shit, anti-vax, really, really upset about this. And I know better. I'm just going to kind of keep my mouth shut. Like nothing's good is going to come of this. It's my girlfriend's friends and my girlfriend's family. So I'm like, I'm not gonna stir the pot here. But I thought it was interesting that this rant that they went on about misinformation was completely based on misinformation. Spotify did not kick Neil Young off of their platform. Neil Young came out of nowhere and said, I don't want to be on the same platform as this piece of shit Joe Rogan. It's either me or him. Take my music down or get rid of Joe Rogan. And Spotify, obviously just the entire Spotify platform is basically built around Joe Rogan. They recently gave him $100 million. Neil Young is in large part irrelevant. I know a lot of people on Twitter and Reddit want to say, oh, Neil Young's awesome, because they side with him on this controversy. But the reality is, one podcast of Joe Rogan's does more views, more streams than Neil Young's entire catalog, and probably Neil Young and Joni Mitchell's entire catalogs put together. So we kind of know who Spotify is going to side with here, but Spotify never kicked him off. He's the one who brought this up. He's the one who gave an ultimatum. Neil Young does not even own his own music. Neil Young's music is owned, somebody bought the rights to his music, and I believe his ex-wife owns some of his music as well. So he didn't even have the right to tell them to take his music off, but just to be nice guys, they were like, okay, we'll take your music off. By the way, you're welcome to come back anytime. We'd love to have you back. There was no anger on Spotify's part. Spotify was very graceful in how they handled the situation and even said you're welcome to come back at any time. Spotify does pay the least of pretty much almost any streaming service, so I think that kind of might be the real reason behind it, as well as just Neil Young kind of trying to get in the news and stay relevant. What's kind of ironic is Neil Young is a 70s rocker who did a freedom tour and talks a lot about freedom, yet he's calling for somebody to be censored, which is kind of crazy to me. So anyhow, at this party that I'm at, everyone's ranting about misinformation, but nobody can actually mention a specific point or something that Joe Rogan or his guest said that they find offensive or that they disagree with. And with a lot of the discussion online, I see people, what an asshole, he's spreading misinformation. Nobody who's saying this has ever listened to the Joe Rogan show or can actually point to a piece of misinformation. So they're basically parroting something that they saw on MSNBC or on Reddit on r/news, but nobody can actually point to a specific piece of misinformation. You'd go a lot further if you actually did find pieces of misinformation, which I'm sure there are things that, I don't know if we want to say misinformation, but at the very least things that can be questioned. You should bring up those specific points and provide an argument to them, as opposed to just throwing out this blanket term and say, I want to silence this guy. There's a great phrase or a great quote. It's that when you cut out a man's tongue, you don't prove him a liar, you just prove you're scared of what he has to say. And it's kind of crazy that the entire world basically has one worldview, one narrative, and Joe Rogan's pretty much the only guy that thus far has been able to go against that or question that without being silenced. So we'll see what winds up happening with Joe Rogan and Spotify. Does Joe Rogan kind of stick to his guns and kind of keep doing his normal show? Does Spotify keep him on there? Here's one thing that's interesting. So I think we can kind of draw some comparisons to the outrage over Dave Chappelle by the trans community and wanting his Netflix special taken off of what is it? Taken off of Netflix. And with that, Netflix makes their money off subscribers, not advertisers. So nobody really canceled. Same thing with when it was actually kind of the right that was calling on Netflix to be canceled. But remember when they did that show Cuties, that like kind of weird chomo show with little girls in bikinis and stuff? And conservatives or the right was calling on everybody to boycott boycott Netflix, cancel Netflix. This is kind of the same situation. They're not reliant on advertiser money, and obviously corporations don't really have any official views. They don't really have any morals, ethics. They kind of blow where public opinion goes. So they'll stand behind something, but then as public opinion changes, they'll change their stance on the issue. Look at during like Gay Pride Month and things like that. When look at any multinational corporations like Twitter or Instagram account, and every one of their logos from around the world will change to a rainbow flag, with the exception of the Middle East, which will turn black. And so it's like you either stand for something and back an issue, or you don't. But in all the countries that are friendly to your message, you're going to put up a rainbow flag. And in the one area of the world that wouldn't be friendly to that message, you're not going to be courageous enough to put up a rainbow flag. I'm just kind of trying to make the point that corporations are very sensitive to people getting upset, and they'll be quick to pull their sponsorships. And everybody needs sponsorships or needs ad money to continue with their business, to make money. So most companies wind up caving to this. Spotify is kind of unique in that they rely on subscriptions, and at least at this point, it doesn't look like a lot of people are canceling their Spotify subscriptions. And I imagine for as many people that cancel, a lot of other people will join just because they want to support a platform that isn't going to cave to woke culture and censorship. So we're already 12 minutes into this. So let's hop on and play Joe Rogan's response to this. And hats off to Joe Rogan. I don't know how anybody could watch this and hate the guy. I mean, I think he kind of addresses the situation very well. He says, if I offended you, if I upset you, I'm very sorry. He said, I'm not mad at Neil Young, even though the whole world is attacking Joe Rogan, including the Surgeon General, including Neil Young. He doesn't come out swinging back at people. He basically says, look, we have differing views. I think that's kind of a good thing. If I upset you, I'm sorry. We are going to put warnings on the podcast. I think that's kind of stupid. I mean, I get it. They have to do something to appease people, but it's kind of like putting a "this beverage is hot" warning on coffee. Like, you don't really need to be told that. Like, everybody should have some common sense and not be an idiot. But they are going to put a warning at the beginning of the podcast. And then Joe Rogan says, maybe I do need to have some more people with dissenting views. I can't always be against the official narrative. I think kind of the reason he's gone in that direction is because everything else in the entire world is promoting and pushing the official narrative and censoring everything else. So Joe Rogan's pretty much the only place on the internet where you can get a dissenting view. But nonetheless, it does seem like he's going to kind of try to be a little bit more balanced. And I saw even The Rock in a comment below this video. The Rock's like, well said, brother, appreciate you. I hope to come on the show soon and share a bottle of tequila with you. So without further ado, let's hop into Joe Rogan's response.
Hello, friends. I wanted to make a video to address some of the controversy that's been going on over the past few days. And first of all, to say thank you to everyone that sent love and support. I truly, truly appreciate it. And it's been very nice to hear from you. I wanted to make this video, first of all, because I think there's a lot of people that have a distorted perception of what I do, maybe based on sound bites or based on headlines of articles that are disparaging.
That's kind of an interesting thing. When I was talking about being at this dinner party and everyone, can you believe that asshole Joe Rogan? They've never watched a Joe Rogan show. They don't know what quote-unquote misinformation he's spreading. They just have this idea of Joe Rogan from Fear Factor or News Radio that he's some meathead jock and, he had people eat bugs, so he must be an idiot. When in reality, he's bringing on, and he kind of addresses this, but he's bringing on one of the most published researchers in this area, one of the guys who was part of creating the mRNA technology. But we'll get back to this. Let Joe Rogan tell you about it.
The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation, specifically about two episodes, a little bit about some other ones, but specifically about two. One with Dr. Peter McCullough and one with Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he is the most published physician in his field in history. Dr. Robert Malone owns 9 patents on the creation of mRNA vaccine technology and is at least partially responsible for the creation of the technology that led to mRNA vaccines. Both these people are very highly credentialed, very intelligent, very accomplished people, and they have an opinion that's different from the mainstream narrative. I wanted to hear what their opinion is. I had them on, and because of that, those episodes in particular, those episodes were labeled as being dangerous. They had dangerous misinformation in them. The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact. Like, for instance, 8 months ago, if you said, if you get vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and you can still spread COVID, you would be removed from social media. They would ban you from certain platforms. Now, that's accepted as fact. If you said, I don't think cloth masks work, you would be banned from social media. Now, that's openly and repeatedly stated on CNN. If you said, I think it's possible that COVID-19 came from a lab, you'd be banned from many social media platforms. Now, that's on the cover of Newsweek. All of those theories that at one point in time were banned were openly discussed by those two men that I had on my podcast that have been accused of dangerous misinformation. I do not know if they're right. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person who sits down and talks to people and has conversations with them. Do I get things wrong? Absolutely, I get things wrong, but I try to correct them. Whenever I get something wrong, I try to correct it because I'm interested in telling the truth. I'm interested in finding out what the truth is. And I'm interested in having interesting conversations with people that have differing opinions. I'm not interested in only talking to people that have one perspective. That's one of the reasons why I had Sanjay Gupta on, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who I respect very much, and I really enjoyed our conversation together. He has a different opinion than those men do. I had Dr. Michael Osterholm on at the very beginning of the pandemic. He is on President Biden's COVID-19 advisory board. I had Dr. Peter Hotez on, who is a vaccine expert. I'm interested in finding out what is correct, and I'm also finding out how people come to these conclusions and what the facts are. Now, because of this controversy, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes with these controversies, but Neil Young has removed his music from the platform of Spotify, and Joni Mitchell, and apparently some other people want to as well. I'm very sorry that they feel that way. I most certainly don't want that.
And isn't it weird how, I don't know, it's just very strange to me how people think it's okay to, I want to shut down everyone's point of view and everyone's voice who doesn't agree lockstep with everything that I say. I don't know, that I don't even really know where to go from there. But that whole part of this is just really crazy to me, that it's acceptable to be like, I disagree with you, so I want to silence you. To me, that makes me question your motives, that you want to silence somebody as opposed to debate them or provide facts that dispute what they're saying. But let's get back to Joe here.
I'm a Neil Young fan. I've always been a Neil Young fan. I'll tell you a story at the end of this about that. One of the things that Spotify wants to do that I agree with is that at the beginning of these controversial podcasts, like specifically ones about COVID, is to put a disclaimer and say that you should speak with your physician, and that these people and the opinions that they express are contrary to the opinions of the...
You know what's actually kind of interesting about this? The whole idea that people should speak to their physician and make a decision based on their own situation and their own health is actually one that's being kind of shot down by the mainstream narrative. The official narrative is get the Mexican beer cough needle, get the Mexican beer cough needle, get the Mexican beer cough needle. If you look at a lot of these mandates, they don't allow for medical exemptions. I know New York's doesn't allow for medical exemptions. I'm not sure about the city of Chicago. I don't believe so, but I'm not positive about that. But the whole narrative seems to be, no matter what, just get the thing. No matter what, just get the thing. There doesn't really seem to be a discussion about talking to your own, primary care physician and making a decision with them based on your unique situation. The message seems to be everybody needs to get this thing. If you see people talk about allergic reactions or negative reactions or anything else, it's kind of, everybody kind of poo-poos that and is like, it's very rare. It doesn't happen. There's 3 different types of thing in your arms. One of them will work for you. Just get the thing. So the idea that people are actually going to talk to their physician and make a decision for themselves is actually one that's been kind of poo-pooed. What will actually get you banned off of social media is saying anything that spreads Mexican beer cough, thing in your arm, hesitancy. So even factually true things. If you ever watch TV and you see a commercial for Viagra, at the end of the commercial, they rattle off 30 seconds worth of, warnings. You may have an erection that lasts longer than 4 hours. You may have this. You may have a heart attack. People deserve, regardless of how rare those instances are, people deserve to know the repercussions of what they're taking. But when it comes to the Mexican beer cough thing in your arm, having somebody be informed about what they're taking may cause hesitancy. So we won't inform them, and we'll just say everybody needs to get the thing. So I think it's kind of interesting that even this warning is kind of going against the mainstream narrative.
Consensus of experts, which I think is very important. Sure, have that on there. I'm very happy with that. Also, I think if there's anything that I've done that I could do better is have more experts with differing opinions right after I have the controversial ones. I would most certainly be open to doing that. And I would like to talk to some people that have differing opinions.
Here's another thing that's interesting about this. If you're watching CNN or, whatever else you're watching, whatever other podcast you're watching, everybody else shoves the mainstream narrative down your throat, but nobody questions that mainstream narrative or has on any guests that question that mainstream narrative. But Joe Rogan's actually being open enough that he's willing to allow both sides to speak and the best ideas to win out, as opposed to silencing one side and only getting your opinion out.
On those podcasts in the future. We'll see. I do all the scheduling myself, and I don't always get it right. These podcasts are very strange because they're just conversations, and oftentimes I have no idea what I'm going to talk about until I sit down and talk to people, and that's why some of my ideas are not that prepared or fleshed out, because I'm literally having them in real time.
That's one of the things that we got to keep in mind as well. Joe Rogan does 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour podcasts. It's pretty much just free-flowing conversation. It's not scripted. It's not planned. And have you guys ever been in a brainstorming session or something like that? You're going to come out with some really terrible ideas, and then you're going to kind of refine those ideas and kind of hash them out before you come to your brilliant ideas. And that's basically what's going on in a Joe Rogan show. When you have a 4-hour conversation that's recorded, that's unplanned, and you're just speaking off the top of your head, you're going to say things that you yourself may not even agree with, just as you're kind of trying to flesh out ideas. So I think that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind as well.
But I do my best, and they're just conversations, and I think that's also the appeal of the show. It's one of the things that makes it interesting. So I want to thank Spotify for being so supportive during this time, and I'm very sorry that this is happening to them and that they're taking so much heat from it. And so now the Neil Young.
Here's another interesting thing about this real quick. So when I was at this party, one of the people I was with when they were ranting about Joe Rogan was like, oh, and did you see Spotify's stock lost $4 billion in the past, couple days since this happened? Well, the entire market, all tech stocks, the NASDAQ, everything was down that much or more. Neil Young had zero effect on Spotify stock going down. And actually, since the incident, Spotify stock is actually up about 2.5%. I don't credit that to Neil Young or Joe Rogan. It's just, they're trying to kind of like push this Neil Young idea, and it's going to have a big impact on us by saying that the stocks were down. But the entire stock market was down, and now Spotify stock is back up. But I don't think you're going to see any articles that Spotify stock up 2.5% because they stood up for free speech.
Story. When I first of all, I'm not mad at Neil Young. I'm a huge Neil Young fan. I've always been a Neil Young fan. When I was 19, I was a security guard at a place called Great Woods in Mansfield, Massachusetts. It's an outdoor concert amphitheater, and Neil Young was playing there, and that was the last day I worked there. I quit during the Neil Young concert. The job was kind of crazy because there was a lot of times there was fights broke out and stuff, and I think I probably got like $15 an hour, and I was not about to get beat up for $15 an hour. So I would bring a hoodie with me whenever I worked. So in case the shit hit the fan and it got too crazy, I would just put my hoodie on and leave and cover my security outfit, my security shirt. So one day during a Neil Young concert, there's the amphitheater, the way it's set up is there's a covered area outside that has seats, and then there's a lawn area behind it. And the lawn area, during the Neil Young concert, they got a little rowdy. It was cold out, and they started bonfires. So they had these raging fires on the lawn, and we were supposed to go and put these fires out and stop them. So we tried for a little while, but then brawls started breaking out, and it started getting crazy. And I was like, fuck this. So I put my hoodie on, I zipped it up, and I left. And I drove home, and as I was driving home, I was singing, "Keep on rocking in a free world." That was my last day on the job. I don't even think I collected my last check. So no hard feelings towards Neil Young, and definitely no hard feelings towards Joni Mitchell. I love her too. I love her music. Chucky's in Love is a great song. I don't know what else I can do differently other than maybe try harder to get people with differing opinions on right afterwards. I do think that that's important, and do my best to make sure that I've researched these topics, the controversial ones in particular, and have all the pertinent facts at hand before I discuss them. Again, I'm not trying to promote misinformation. I'm not trying to be controversial. I've never tried to do anything with this podcast other than just talk to people and have interesting conversations. I didn't plan it. I can't believe it's as successful as it is. It was never really an idea that I had. The podcast started off as just fucking around with my friends and having fun and talking. And then when it became popular, other people wanted to come on, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to talk to that person. Oh, he's interesting. Oh, she's got a cool book out. And then, boom, it's become what it is today, which is like some out-of-control juggernaut that I barely have control of. So my pledge to you is that I will do my best to try to balance out these more controversial viewpoints with other people's perspectives so we can maybe find a better point of view. I don't want to just show the contrary opinion to what the narrative is. I want to show all kinds of opinions so that we can all figure out what's going on, and not just about COVID, about everything, about health, about fitness, wellness, the state of the world itself. It's a strange responsibility to have this many viewers and listeners. It's very strange, and it's nothing that I prepared for, and it's nothing that I ever anticipated. I am going to do my best in the future to balance things out. I'm going to do my best. But my point of doing this is always just to create interesting conversations and ones that I hope people enjoy. So if I pissed you off, I'm sorry. And if you enjoy the podcast, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to...
Okay, I'm just going to open up the comments here real quick. The Rock, great stuff here, brother. Perfectly articulated. Look forward to coming on one day and breaking out a bottle of tequila. I don't know how anybody can really be mad at Joe Rogan. One thing you got to keep in mind is this podcast did start out as Joe Rogan and a couple of his comedian and MMA buddies hanging out in his house, getting stoned, talking about aliens and Bigfoot and conspiracy theorists. And the podcast has obviously grown. It's matured. He had Bernie Sanders on. He had Tulsi Gabbard on. He had Jack Dorsey on. He had Elon Musk on smoking a joint and causing all that hubbub with the NSA or NASA or whatever it was, because he's not allowed, because of his security clearance, he's not allowed to do drugs. The show has gone from a guy hanging around with his buddies getting high, talking shit about conspiracies, to being, you could argue like one of the biggest kind of cultural movements ever. You got the White House, you got the Surgeon General talking about Joe Rogan, saying he needs to be canceled. It's become such a huge part of politics and culture, and even the Mexican beer cough and everything that's gone on in the past 2 years. I know even a lot of people who like Joe Rogan don't necessarily like the direction that the show's gone. They think it's either too libertarian, too right wing. Joe Rogan, has one tune, and it's let's contradict the official narrative about the Mexican beer cough. I kind of liked when he used to have Tom Segura and these other guys on. Honestly, since Joe Rogan moved over to Spotify, I haven't watched it as much. Even though I agree with all his viewpoints, and I like that he's not afraid to go against the mainstream or go against the grain. It does kind of seem to be one tune over and over and over, and I do kind of long for the older episodes when it was more fun and just kind of goofy. But I don't dislike Joe Rogan or the show. It's just, it's on Spotify. That's really the only thing I watch on Spotify. I spend most of my time on YouTube. So I just don't necessarily think to go over there. But if somebody mentions to me that there's an interesting guest or there was an interesting episode, I'm always down to check it out. But we'll wrap this up. I got to get running. Would love to hear your thoughts on this and other issues. And then what do you think is going to ultimately wind up coming of this? This could go so many different directions. A lot of times a company takes a stand or takes a stance and then eventually backs down after public pressure becomes too much. It'll be interesting to see if more music artists start to pull their music off Spotify, or if there's a big movement of people canceling Spotify subscriptions. If we can learn something from history, that's probably unlikely to happen. It's not what wound up happening with Netflix in any of the controversies that Netflix has gotten involved with, but it'll be interesting to see. I could also see Spotify deciding to be kind of a YouTube competitor and roll out more, either a competing platform or making their platform more of a video platform. I think right now Joe Rogan's show is the only one that has video in addition to just audio. But, will they try to compete with YouTube as the free speech network or the free speech platform? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out. Would love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this type of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. That's all I got for you guys today. I'll catch you on the next video.